You can all listen to this, but specifically for you guys in the corner. So give us 5 minutes, all right? And I think you'll enjoy. Well, not enjoy this.
I don't know what on earth he's going to do, boys. What do you want, Tom?
It's fair to say you guys are quite young. So as far as you're concerned, you've got school, college, a job, getting married. You've got your long life in it.
Getting married?
Right? Here's the thing. How do you know you got tomorrow? My friend here, a few months ago now, got up to go to work, and he's got a motorbike. Now I'm going to let him tell you what happened. The reason we tell you this story is this: don't take tomorrow for granted, okay? Because you think you got all this time. Even young people, accidents happen, and he's going to say what happened to him. And because he's a born-again Christian, what he thought God was doing and how he felt about God throughout this, okay? So, Byron, explain to them what happened that particular morning when you were going to work.
I've already told you this, haven't I? Yeah. What happened was I was on the way to work in July 31st, and I was riding along my street, which is in Llas Hamlet, and this gentleman of mature age, shall we say, was coming the other direction. So I was going along here, and he was coming along here, and he decided to come inside of me and to bang into my leg and the rest of the parts of me on my right. And I went into my tank and bust the tank, and the bike went everywhere, and I went 10 yards into a lamppost, and I was on the floor. Policeman came with his bike, and an ambulance driver, and the policeman said, no, he's dead. Next minute I opened my eyes. So he was a bit glad, and my wife was. And I was taken to hospital. I forgot, I didn't know what happened in the accident. Before or after, for about 12 hours, I forgot everything. But the next minute I remember was that I was told all about the accident, but I couldn't remember it just as well, really. But the one thing that was important for me is that, like Rob said, I don't know if you know what this strange term really, isn't it? Born-again Christian. What on earth is a born-again Christian? Well, when I was not much older than yourselves, guys, I was brought up in a village not far from here. And church to me was a laugh, a joke. People that went there were old, boring, dull, just had nothing to do with my life, the way I was living. So all I wanted was music, football, and the other stuff, you know what I mean? So, a little bit later on, in my teens, in my early teens, I started to play these things, because my dad played them as well. So I did some semi-professional stuff. Even when I was 13, I was playing in the pubs and clubs. I'm not sure if I played in this one, actually, upstairs. In cabaret stuff, and earning quite a bit of money when I was still in school. And life was going well, but then I lost my dad very tragically when I was 13. And that had a big impact on my life. I don't know how you guys are with your dads, but I love my dad. And it had a big impact on my life. I was wrecked, to be honest with you. But then a couple of years later, I said to my mates whilst I was in a pub in Gosainen, which is that way, about 12 miles, whatever. I said, let's go to church tonight for a laugh. They got a new minister there. Let's go for a laugh. I said, get lost. So I said, well, I'm going to go anyway. I'm going to go for a laugh. But you know, I went in with my leather jacket because I was into bikes and everything else, and I had hair down to here, orange colour, natural. And I went in there, and there were people there that welcomed me. And he said, you know, nice to see you come in. I thought, oh, that's nice. They accepted me for the way I was. And they said some stuff, and a guy got up and spoke, and I thought, oh, that sounds good. But I don't know how much it means to me. But a week later, they invited me to go and see a film with them called The Cross and the Switchblade. It was about two gangs that were in New York fighting each other, true story. And they were basically killing one another, and there's a lot of drugs involved and everything else, the kind of stuff that I was starting to get into myself. So by the end of that film, I thought, man, what are these guys on? Because there was a man in this film that had actually gone into the middle of these gangs, and he said, listen guys, God really loves you. And I remember quite clearly now that one of the leaders of one of these gangs said, you tell me more about this God stuff and I slit you up in 1,000 little pieces with a slick knife. I put it in his throat. And a guy was shaking, his knees were shaking, and he said, do you know, Nicky, that was his name, if you cut me up into 1,000 little pieces, every piece will still care for you and love you. And that freaked me out. I thought, how can this guy, who's been told that he's going to be killed by this other one, how could he say that to him, that he cared for him, and that he loved him, and he was willing to forgive him? Well, he said, Nicky, God loves you. And that freaked this guy, Nicky, out. And he ran away, and that's all he could hear. He could almost see this little cartoon figure above his head. God loves me, God loves me. But he went nuts. He went nuts. He just ran off, and it's all he could hear is, Nicky, God loves you. So he ran off, and not so long after, this guy actually became a Christian. He couldn't handle it. The love of God, how he could love him as such a bad guy as he was. It's a true story. And so at the end of this film, that had quite an impact on me, because although I wasn't a gang leader and slicing everybody up with a knife, I was very much into motorbikes on the scene. But by the end of that film, I realised that God loved me too. And do you know, it's a possibility, guys, that God loves you too, don't you think?
Yeah.
And I say this, it's not a possibility, it's a reality.
Yeah.
So much so that a man who's the Son of God, and God himself, give himself so that we can have an opportunity to know God ourselves. And that even though if I had died in that accident 6 months ago, you know, I'd have no problem, because I know I'd be with God. And if we can all say that, really out of our hearts, that's what would happen to us, that would be great. But we can only know that with God's forgiveness in our lives, because Jesus died to forgive us all of the things that you may think is funny tonight as well. You may think it's funny, but God still loves you. It doesn't matter. You can think it's funny as much as you like, but God loves you, and he always will. So much so that he sent his Son to die for you, for all of us. So that's my story.
Thank you, Byron.